aware of any criminal acts engaged in by
No.
any of your guests?
None, no. There was no.
We all agree, and I know you do as well as your neighbors do, that what happened on September 15th shouldn't have happened. Isn't that right?
That's correct, no. That won't be a repeat. I've changed the rules. You're not even allowed to have a gathering anymore. So if that even starts to occur, it's just not going to happen because I'm not going to allow it. It's in the rules. When before it was allowed that you were allowed to have a gathering. It was in there that you were allowed, and I've completely changed it after that.
If your conditional use application is approved and the neighbors have concerns, how will they know how to reach you?
I will send a letter to anyone within, I believe it's 200 to 300 feet of me, letting them know that they can contact me if there's a problem. If they want to make additional complaints to the township, I'll give them the information where they can do those additional complaints, and I'll let them know when it'll be starting and when it'll be ending, so that they know that, you know, we're coming and going as well. And also, I come and go throughout the whole, when they're there, I'm in between all the stays as well. I go to the home
And this is a letter, and
sure.
it's described
Yeah.
in the application that would go either by mail, email, or hand delivery to all of the properties within 300 feet of your house.
Correct. I
And
have
it- And it would go at the beginning of each season.
Yes, the beginning of each season.
I passed along to you an email from Eli Davies that indicated that someone had reported that you did not have a building permit for work that was done in your basement. And it also questioned whether or not you had a building permit for your swimming pool. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Did you in fact have a permit, building permit,
Mhm.
as well as a zoning permit to install the swimming pool?
I did, yes, I do.
Did you have a building permit for the wall that was built in the basement?
I did not. I didn't. It was a non-loading, load-bearing wall, and it was in a room that was already finished, and I just separated it in half and made it 2 rooms instead of 1.
And what are you doing about the fact that you now know you didn't have a building permit for that?
I'm locking those off until I do receive a building permit. And if I don't, I'll find out how I can, fix it, make it right with zoning.
So those rooms will not be available to any of your short-term renters?
That's correct. I've reduced it for now to a 5-bedroom rental on both VRBO and Airbnb to reflect that for now. It really wouldn't affect the amount of people because it's so large. It's a very large home.
How much money have you and your husband invested to make the use of your home available for short-term rentals?
Approximately $40,000.
Why did you decide to do that?
Well, we wanted it to be a nice atmosphere. We added new furniture and put that wall up down there and made some repairs to the home and spruced it up. But we wanted to do that to make it nice, and so that we could invest in the future that we were foreseeing after, once we became empty nesters, and that's kind of where our mind went, looking towards the future of what to do with this beautiful property.
And one of the letters that has been submitted by one of the neighbors is arguing that, well, you're doing this for your retirement. Is that accurate?
Yes, absolutely. That we started talking about him. He's going to retire before me, hopefully in the next 5 years or less. And we wanted to have a retirement plan so that we could maintain our lifestyle and possibly expand in the area and possibly purchase even another rental property or 2 down the line. But this was going to be the beginning of it for us. This is the beginning.
I have no other questions
Sorry.
at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Yes. Please.
Exhibit 5 in the application is an Airbnb listing. The VRBO listing, I assume, is pretty similar.
Yes. They're, yeah.
When was that listing printed?
The very beginning of the process.
The application was dated October 15th.
Mhm.
Exhibit 5 is the listing as of October 14th or as of May or what? That's what-
That was as of probably in like October,
So-
mid-October.
This listing says there's 7 bedrooms and 14 guests. You just said it was 5 bedrooms.
Yes,
fewer
and,
guests.
well, no, we have it to where, we did have it to you could have 18 people stay there, 18 guests and 7 bedrooms. And I have since reduced it to 14. I reduced it to 14 immediately with all of this ruckus going on, and I also made all kinds of changes to the rules. And then when I found out with the wall situation, that those 2 bedrooms need not be mentioned until we figure out what's going on with the wall. So I changed it to 5 bedrooms for the time being and stopped taking any new. But they can have, the 14 people can come and stay, and then I said they're allowed to have up to 14 guests to like come and swim and enjoy the property with them. Because a lot of people, most of these are families with children, and they come in like grandparents and they want to see their grandkids, and you know, maybe their aunt and their cousin comes to swim with them. That's been the majority of the people staying there.
Okay, I'm still not sure. I'm
Okay,
understanding
all right, I'm sorry.
What the numbers are.
Yeah.
How many, okay, let's assume that the work in the basement is permitted, and you can count those bedrooms.
Mhm.
How many bedrooms?
There would be 7 rooms to
Okay.
sleep in, yeah.
7.
There's 3 bedrooms on the first floor. There were 2 bedrooms down there with a rec room, and we turned the rec room into 2 more rooms.
Okay.
But I closed those off.
So, since they're closed off because there's no permit, there are currently 5 bedrooms. Like, if you were gonna rent it out tomorrow,
Yeah.
you're not,
Right,
you would
5.
advertise it as 5.
Correct, 100%.
And if there were 5, how many guests would be permitted to sleep at the house?
14. 14. There are a couple of bedrooms that have 2 beds in it. We also have a very nice pull-out couch and a futon, and that's very typical of an Airbnb to allow that many guests. I don't even think we've gone over the 14 threshold as far as people staying in the home overnight. But yeah.
So, if you can get the 2 new bedrooms permitted,
Mhm.
you back up to 7 bedrooms, and then what's the max number to sleep?
14. I'm not gonna change that. I don't wanna change that.
Okay, and then in addition to that, I think what you said, maybe I misunderstood you. There's a certain number of additional guests who can be there.
Yeah, up to 4 guests of them. So there wouldn't be any more than 18 people there at a time.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And that was down from 40 before, is that right?
Well, we were allowing up to 40 guests. Not that many, there hasn't been that many people there as far as like not overnight guests. They were just to come and swim and enjoy the property and then go home.
40
Not
guests
permitted.
or 40 people?
40 people total.
Okay.
You could only have 40 people on the property, and we have not gone over that. The September 15th was the most amount of people that had been there.
And how many people were on September 15th?
She told me she had a guest list of 30 people, and there were 5 adults staying in the home. So that would be 35 people.
Okay. What happened on September 15th?
Well, it was a gender reveal party, and
But what happened?
what happened? Okay, so they had a DJ, ridiculously loud, playing inappropriate music. They had foul language in the music, and they also had a fireworks display to reveal the gender, you know, the color of the fireworks, to reveal the gender. It was quite a party. Yeah, not to happen at my house anymore. No.
And then there was also something that happened as people were leaving.
Oh yeah, there was a fight in the front yard. There was a guest that was unruly that didn't want to leave, and she was being made to leave because she was under the understanding that they were going to let her stay the night or something. And they made her leave, and there was a girl fight in the front, and it broke out, and it was loud from my reports from the neighbors. It wasn't good. It was a bad situation when the police showed up, and think someone was arrested. I'm not sure, but I think. And there were people also that were, when they were leaving, I was told that there were people going too fast up and down the road. So there was some speeding going on during that.
So this was, you're 10 minutes away when this happens. Did you then come to the property?
I was not at the time. I was on my way back from Atlanta driving, and didn't have my phone on to receive anything. But my husband was 10 minutes away, and my neighbors do have his contact information as well. So he was there. He wasn't contacted until near the end of it. It was like after 8 o'clock when he did get contacted. But I had already been addressing the problem. I received my first notification at like 3:30ish in the afternoon, and by the time I saw it, it was around 7 o'clock. And also I had received a phone call from another neighbor, and that's what really alerted me. It was her phone call, and then I immediately called the people and said, you need to tone this down. This was probably, by the time I called them and got off the phone with my neighbors to find out what was going on, I called them around 8, and then everybody was pretty much dispersing and leaving by 9:15, 9:30, and then that's when the fight broke out. Or maybe a little after that. It was I think the fireworks display was around 9:15 at night, maybe just before. It was on a Sunday.
Any further questions from the board?
How often is it rented? Like up until that point, are you talking like every weekend, every week,
Well,
once a month?
no, it was pretty much every weekend, just about, but not quite. We had several periods of time. There was a 2-week period of time where there was no one there. There was a couple other periods of time. There's usually a gap in between, like a couple of days, but not all of them. Some of them were just like back-to-back bookings. Like in July was completely booked, where I would go in between with the cleaning crew and get everything switched over.
And then what would you say the average number of people? I
That
know
were
you've been
staying.
35,
Oh.
what's like the least you've had?
Oh, the least I've had is 6, or maybe even less, like 6. But the most I think that even were saying they were going to be staying there was, I think 14. I gave a head count on all of them, and I was just looking at them. But I think the most that anybody's even stayed there is 14 people.
Is there a minimum night stay? Can they stay for one night or is it
No,
2
it's
night,
minimum
3
4
night?
night stay.
What's that?
A minimum 4 night stay.
4 nights?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want it to be too much of a revolving door, and I didn't want it for myself. I just, yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this appeal? Prior to taking anybody who's opposed the appeal, I just want to repeat our rules. I want to make sure we get through everybody, but we don't want to hear any repetitive testimony. So if you agree with something somebody said prior, you're welcome to come up and state, I agree with that. And, please be seated, and then we can get other people in there as well, too. So we want to give everybody a chance. And with that, is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please state your name, address, and your affiliation.
Thank you. I'm Amy Duffy. I'm at 6543 Kentucky View Drive. I am a lifelong resident of Anderson Township. I attended Forest Hill School District K through 12, and I chose to raise my family in Anderson Township. My husband and I are direct neighbors of the property in question, and we have resided here for 16 years. This is an emotional situation, so I did write down everything I was going to say because I don't want to forget anything, and I don't want to veer off course. I do want to state my opposition to the short-term rental application, and as the next-door neighbor, I believe the situation has risen from a nuisance to unsafe. We are a small cul-de-sac neighborhood, which I don't think was fully shown in those pictures. We have 35 homes, and we have only one way in and out. It seems we are all aware of that gender reveal party that just took place on September 15th, but please note this was not the only disruption to our neighborhood. This was an unpermitted VRBO activity that was into the entire summer. This last event on September the 15th was simply the most criminal. I would like to draw attention to that day because I think it's important for you to notice that there was really an inadequate response. So I'm going to go through that day one more time. The property owner was repeatedly contacted by neighbors throughout the afternoon and early evening due to the obscene music that was blasted at concert-level decibels on the lawn of the property. You could not have a conversation outside, and it was a beautiful day. It was a Bengals game, and we were attempting to host a family gathering. Children ranging from ages 6 to 14, as well as my elderly in-laws, were innocent victims of this music. After several hours, the property owner did reply via text to neighbors, but did nothing to stop this disorderly and disruptive behavior. If the property owner was concerned with the safety of our neighborhood, they would have come to the scene, and they did not. There was no action taken. The day culminated in a 10 to 15-minute firework display at roughly 9:15 that night, a school night. Considering we were experiencing a record drought, you would think that the property owner would be concerned and would have contacted the police themselves, but that did not happen. No action was taken. After the fireworks display, there was an outbreak of loud fighting. They've already covered that. The police were called, but they were called by neighbors. They were not called by the property owners. Turning the page to Monday, and this is where it gets a little emotional, so I'm going to apologize in advance. It was a school day. It was a work day. Our children go to school. I go to work. I assume that the renters were gone, that the property owner had taken action and removed these renters from the property, but no such action was taken. Around 3:15 that day, our 13-year-old son walked to his after-school job caring for a neighbor's dog, and as he passed that property in question, he witnessed fighting between a man and a pregnant woman with loud screaming of obscenities, pushing and shoving, and then he witnessed a man knock the pregnant woman to the ground. I believe this is categorized as an assault. Our son was scared and unsure. He felt very uncomfortable, but he continued walking, and upon seeing smashed party candy littering the street, he feared it was illegal drugs on our road. And then 2 cars went speeding past him. When he came home, he was rattled. He was scared for himself and for the neighborhood, as was I. But beyond that, I felt shocked and foolish because I assumed that the property owner had taken appropriate action and removed these renters from the property, and she didn't. I unknowingly put my child at risk. I let the property owner know, and I assumed that they would take action, and again, no action was taken. They did not force the renters to leave. Instead, they allowed those renters to stay on that property until the original checkout date of September the 18th. And I bring this to you asking, is this appropriate action of a short-term rental property? And as the neighbors of this, are we supposed to just weather all of these disruptions? And it's unsafe. So I would like to state my opposition, and I thank you.
Any questions from the board?
You said the gender reveal party was one of the disruptions of the summer. Can you give us
Yeah.
any other specific examples?
Certainly. Obscene language overheard in our pool. We're on the other side of that fence right there, and we have 2 boys and sometimes some of their friends over, and even if it's just us, just loud, obnoxious, obscene language at times, parking, of course, odors of scents that are coming from the backyard of parties. Parking, I think I already said that, but there's been several instances where you can't really find a place to park on the street. September 15th was the gender reveal. September 16th was the following day when my son witnessed the assault.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please step forward, state your name, address, and any affiliation.
My name is Andrea Havens. My husband and I reside at 6531 Kentucky View Drive. I'm an educator in CPS, and we are small business owners in California, Ohio. We have lived in the neighborhood on Kentucky View for 20 years. The location of The business is right next door to mine. Our driveways are within like 10 to 15 yards away. So the driveway that was referred to as like the main entrance into the property if someone were to rent. And so there's, just a lot of the turnover that you see coming and going, strangers coming in and out of the business. With that said, there's a new set of cars coming, containing complete strangers, constantly rotating throughout the summer, right next door. It just, I don't know how to explain, it just doesn't feel comfortable. Our garage doors face the house. We usually have those open. We hang out in our garage. We don't feel comfortable doing that much. My son doesn't want to go out and shoot basketball because he's like, there's just weird people over there in the driveway, da-da-da. And my daughter doesn't want to like pull out the lounge chair and catch some sun rays, just because we don't go out there, hang out there as much anymore. This neighborhood is a special neighborhood where neighborhoods are family, our neighbors are family. We shouldn't feel unsafe, unsure, nervous about what we do on our own property when there are rotating groups of strangers constantly coming in and out of the business located right in the middle of our neighborhood. Where kids run, ride, walk bikes through the streets. There's no sidewalks, there's no street lights at night, and safety was a huge concern. So I find it hard to believe that having this business located in the middle of this neighborhood would not have an adverse effect on the quality of life and sense of safety had by those living in the neighborhood. I am asking that the board consider not granting a permit to the short-term rental business at 6537 Kentucky View Drive.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a couple of questions?
No, you need to allow, according to law, if an attorney wants to cross-examine a witness, they need to be allowed.
Thank you. I will be brief.
Okay.
Ms. Havens, the business that you and your husband have is Deadlow Brewing,
Yes.
and isn't it true that you hosted a big party for Deadlow Brewing at their pool?
Yes.
So they've tried to be good neighbors in the neighborhood, haven't they?
Yes, they are friends of mine. I'm
Okay.
not going to deny that.
No other questions?
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please state your name, address, and affiliation.
Good evening. My name is Jean Bodie. I live at 6549 Kentucky View Drive. I live 2 doors down from this property, and I'm asking you to please not grant a permit for the short-term rental. The negative impact of this unpermitted short-term rental at 6537 Kentucky View Drive has been profound since rentals began in May and continued through October. The event that occurred on September 15th was just one of many disturbances to our quiet, tucked-away neighborhood. The safety and well-being of our neighborhood has been compromised because of this unpermitted rental property. The large events and numerous parties that have been held there include disrupted noises, profane language, and inviting others who are unfamiliar, and lots of traffic in our unfamiliar, no-outlet neighborhood. The significant impact of response to the criminal acts and safety concerns brought to this property owner's attention has given me zero confidence in their ability to keep our neighborhood safe. I contacted the property owner on Sunday, September 15th at 6:30 p.m. expressing my concern about the extremely loud, explicit music. I again contacted them at 8:11 p.m. when I noticed that there were 2 hired security guards standing outside the front door. I expressed my concern as to why an event would require security guards. It wasn't until 9:15 that evening when I heard back from this property owner. While it was very clear to our neighbors that the police needed to be called, which is why our neighborhoods took this action, it did not occur to this property owner to do that on her own to protect our neighborhood. In the property owner's communication back to me, they stated, quote, "They have been very rude to me," referring to their renters, which again illustrates why I have no confidence in their ability to protect our neighborhood. Another event that was hosted on September the 19th through the 22nd in which a loud party was held throughout Saturday. As I was working in my backyard, the loud party continued, and I could clearly hear very profane language from the renters attending this event. Keep in mind, I'm 2 doors down. At 3:31 in the afternoon, I reported this to the business owner, who told me that they were unable to get in touch with the renters after several tries. Eventually, the renters did respond. At 4:48, the property owners asked me questions about the event that was being held at their property. I shared with her that I did not feel it was my responsibility to monitor the event that was being held on their property. Rather, that is why I was sharing the disturbance with them, and it was theirs to handle. As of last night, the listing is still active on VRBO and Airbnb. The description still states that there are 7 bedrooms, as well as all the additional bedding available. Even after receiving the September 19th letter from Anderson Township stating that you please stop operating your short-term rental, it has remained active for the past 48 days. Even though the focus has been on the events that occurred on September 15th and beyond, most days of this summer has been disturbed by the amount of traffic, noise, parties hosted at this property, resulting in significant adverse effect to our sanctuary of a neighborhood. Good neighbors have a responsibility to keep their neighborhood safe. I am asking you to partner with us to keep our neighborhood safe. My hope is I provided you with enough evidence to show how far from appropriate it would be to authorize a permit for this property. Thank you.
Before you go, ma'am,
Yes.
you mentioned that you still saw the Airbnb listing online.
Yes, I have a copy of it that I printed from this morning.
Have you seen any vehicles coming and going that would indicate renters staying at the property?
Through October, yes.
Okay.
There were multiple cars there. The assumption was it was a rental.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Council.
I'd like to be very clear on this. You are claiming that she continued to do short-term rentals on the property in October?
I don't know if she was being
Thank
paid.
you.
Mhm.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please state your name, address, and affiliation.
My name is David Spinogens. I live at 6579 Kentucky View Drive. I have a few things that I would like to enter into evidence. One is a petition with the signatures of every resident on Kentucky View and Gwendolyn Drive, and the other is the letter that the attorney referenced before.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm here to express my opposition to the conditional use permit request for short-term rental at 6537 Kentucky View Drive. In today's environment, it is hard to get agreement amongst a group. We've seen that tonight. It's nearly impossible to get consensus. Yet our entire neighborhood stands in united opposition to the short-term rental permit. I walked our neighborhood with my children, speaking to each resident of Kentucky View and Gwendolyn Drives. Every household signed a petition, at least one member of that household, against this permit, and all expressed serious and varying concerns about the negative impact this business has already had on our lives. Since the Daniels began operating their property as a short-term rental, which was actually listed as up to 70 guests at one point, our neighborhood has experienced significant disruptions. Noise and safety issues, multiple incidents, including the parties from September 15th, but I'd also like to bring up the September 27th and 28th, have caused severe noise disturbances. Renters often engage in loud and inappropriate behavior, and there have been near misses with children on bikes and dog walkers. This poses a serious safety risk. There's also parking and traffic congestion. Guests consistently disregard the parking rules, leading to illegal parking and significant congestion. On September 28th, which is the day after we had those big storms that came in with a lot of wind, crews had trouble accessing a neighbor's yard due to the blocked street from all of the traffic, delaying assistance for a tree that had fallen on a neighbor's car. Lack of communication and complaint handling. The Daniels did not notify anyone of their short-term rental operation. Their proposed communication plan is untested, and past behavior gives us very little confidence that it will be effective. There's a serious impact to neighborhood character. Our neighborhood consists of under 40 homes where everyone knows each other. The revolving door of unknown renters, often involved in drunken partying, undermines the community's safety and tranquility. Children's safety is a major concern of mine. My children's cousin and friends live down at the end of the street. They are just now old enough to be able to ride their bikes to ride down and play with them. However, with the erratic traffic and presence of strangers during the rentals, we no longer trust that they are safe to do that in their own neighborhood. This is a significant concern to us and all parents in the neighborhood. The home is being operated as an event center and a hotel in a quiet residential area. Those are supposed to be zoned a certain way for a certain reason. I moved into my home in 2017 with the plan for my wife and I to stay, raise our children, and eventually have our grandchildren visit us there. As our family grew, we realized we needed more space, and we were considering an addition. However, with a short-term rental causing havoc in our neighborhood, I'm really concerned about investing in my property because the business will negatively impact the property values. While the Daniels claim they have implemented new rules, we have no faith that they will be upheld based on their previous lack of transparency and responsiveness. Their constant absence during rentals mean they do not witness or address the disruptions caused. In fact, they try to delegate monitoring of their business to their neighbors. In conclusion, the continued operation of the short-term rental threatens the safety, peace, character of our neighborhood. I fear for the safety of my children, and I hope I can maintain the peaceful neighborhood that my wife and I purchased our house for. I ask you to deny the conditional use permit request to protect our community. I also would like to thank all of my neighbors for staying this long into the night. It is astounding how much they've put into this. I also want to call out that there are a few that had to leave for other commitments, Daryl and Terry at 6580 Gwendolyn, but they did sign in, so you'll be able to see them on the list. That is all I have. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Council?
What parking rules do you claim were violated?
There are many parking rules that they have violated, but
Tell me one.
So you're not allowed to park that close to a driveway, like right up against it. There's lots of times where people can't back out of their driveway in order to get out of their own driveway.
They could not get out of their driveway?
Mm-hmm.
Who were
Or
they?
at least were impacted. Neighbors.
They were able to get out of their driveway.
Were
Is it your testimony that they were not able to get out of their driveway?
that it was difficult for them to get out of their driveway. actually.
Difficult for them to get out of their
Sure.
driveway.
Because of the
And
amount of
how many
traffic
times
at the
did you
rental.
see this?
Oh, I think she said there were 20
No.
rentals.
How many times did you see this?
Did I see it?
Yes.
Oh, I think, truthfully, what it feels like is that there are those kinds of issues every time there's a rental.
Is there any other parking rules that you claim you saw violated other than a car that may have been parked too close to a driveway?
No, other than the access issues with the crews trying to get to the tree.
I'm asking you about violations. I'm going to get to the crews trying to get to a tree in just a moment.
Yep.
But your only parking violation that you can testify to.
Yeah, because you're allowed to
is-
park on that side of the street, sure.
Okay.
It's just everybody
And
parks
other
there
people-
for the entire street, every
and-
rental.
And other people, other than in their house, have parties on the street, don't they?
Mhm.
And sometimes they have good crowds for their parties, don't they?
Yep,
And-
at the
and
houses
they're-
that they own.
And their guests are entitled to park on the street, aren't
Yep.
they?
Yes.
Now, let's talk about this tree.
Mhm.
What,
I have pictures of that in the street from that day, if
and what
like
do
to
you
submit.
know about why there was a delay? And what kind of a delay was there?
I was walking my dogs down the street and we were looking at all of the wind damage.
Mm-hmm.
Noticed that there was a massive tree that had fallen down on Patricia's car,
Mhm.
and she had gotten people to try and come up and get the tree off.
Who were the people she had to try and get the tree off?
An tree removers.
Okay.
It wasn't emergency, if that's what
Okay.
you're getting at. I'm not saying that emergency vehicles couldn't get there. I'm saying that the crews trying to get the tree couldn't.
And why couldn't they get there?
Because the traffic on the street was too packed. There were a lot of cars.
And did all the cars belong to people who were staying in the short-term rental?
I think you know I can't confirm that, but
No, you
I'm not
can't.
positive. There's not
And
really.
did the tree removers get to the car that had to get the tree off it?
They did eventually, yes.
How, when you say eventually, how long did it take?
Much later in the day, probably 6 hours. I think, I don't know.
You don't know. No other questions?
Any further questions from the board? Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in opposition to the appeal? Please state your name, address, and your affiliation with the case.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Voskel. I live at 6534 Kentucky View Drive. I live right across the street from the Daniels house. I'm one of the neighbors who called the police on the night of the gender reveal party hosted by the short-term renters staying there. I called the police because as I was sitting in my living room, I began to hear loud screaming, shouting, and expletives from a large group of people that had gathered outside, which quickly escalated. I became fearful that the verbal fighting would soon turn violent. I worried for my safety, my family's safety, and the safety of my 7-year-old daughter who was sleeping down the hall. Her bedroom window faces the front of our house and was mere steps from the chaos that was unfolding right outside our home. I'm a longtime Anderson resident. I grew up here, and my husband and I chose Anderson as the place to raise our own family because it is, among other wonderful things, a safe community. That night, I did not feel safe in my own home, and I do not want to be made to feel that way ever again. For this reason, I'm respectfully asking you to deny the short-term rental request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Council? Can you redirect? Sir? Please state your name, address, and any affiliation.
My name's George Shepper, and I'm at, excuse me, 6567 Kentucky View. I support all these people over here that have been talking, but I want to give a different perspective. I grew up in Kentucky on a dead-end street. We knew everybody in the neighborhood, and I grew up liking that. In 1976, I bought the property at 6567 Kentucky View. Excuse me, I'm nervous. In 1981, I built and moved into that house. Since then, I've lived in a neighborhood where just about everybody knows everybody and feels comfortable with that. And when a stranger's in there in the neighborhood, you watch, you pay attention. Sometimes if it really bugs you, you write down the number of the license plate. That's where we live. I like where we live. I've loved it. We've been there for 43 years. I don't plan on moving anytime soon. I just wanted to give you a perspective of somebody who's lived there for a long time and really likes the place, a neighborhood where you know everybody. When we have strangers coming in 5 days a week throughout the summer, it's a little upsetting. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Please step forward to the podium, state your name, address, and any affiliation.
My name's Mary Rust, and I live at 6533, excuse me, Gwendolyn Drive. I actually happen to be a lawyer by trade, but I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here as a homeowner. My husband and I built our house here in 1988. So I'm probably the second oldest homeowner to George, who just spoke. A couple things. echo what everyone has said so far, so I won't repeat that. I am not on the same street. I'm around the corner, so I haven't experienced some of the firsthand situations. Here's what I would tell you from my perspective. We have a street with no sidewalks and no lights. And I'm a person who runs or walks before dawn and after it gets dark. I feel like since this rental has started, there's more traffic at those times, and it's not safe. I can't imagine what it would be like to have children trying to go around during the day. So that's one thing. The second thing is economics for me. I don't think it's really relevant how much money has been put into this rental, but it is relevant for all of us who've put hundreds of thousands of dollars to live there. And I'm afraid if this is approved, that with Riverbend 2.0, with plans that seem to kind of surface periodically, that there's plans for a hotel down across from Belterra, and this entertainment district coming up, if we let one Airbnb into this neighborhood, I feel like we are just going to open the door. And then what does that do to all the rest of us? A statistic that I happened to think of this morning when I was walking. So we have 16 houses in our neighborhood where the resident of the house is over 60. I happen to be one of them. There's a few houses where we have residents who are over the age of 80, and then we have at least one house where there's someone who's over 90. So probably these houses are going to turn over soon. And again, if we open the door to one Airbnb, we're so close and convenient to these, what might be coming as multi-day music festivals. This will be a great location. I'm afraid that when the houses start to turn over, people will buy them for investment properties. So I respectfully ask that you deny this. I also respectfully ask that I feel like some of the people back here are feeling intimidated by, I understand that there's additional questioning is allowed, but I feel like we are being more respectful. So I hope that this board isn't swayed by that. Thank you.
Questions? Any questions from the board?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, please state your name, address, and any affiliation.
Alex Minogens. I'm at 6579 Kentucky View Drive. And I'm going to read this so that I'm short. But I agree with everything my fellow neighbors have already said and will continue to say. I just wanted to highlight a few key points and state that I am opposed to the conditional use permit requested for the short-term rental at 6537 Kentucky View Drive. I am just here today as a mother of 3 children, ages 11, 6, and 5. Our family has lived in this small, close-knit neighborhood for over 7 years. It's a place where we could once let our kids ride their bikes to a friend's house without worry. The Daniels, who have lived there for years, have seen our children grow up and understand the values that make this community so special. You know. Since they began their short-term rental property, everything has changed. Over the summer, when they were illegally operating, we saw a constant turnover of strangers, loud parties, cars speeding through our streets, and even violent behavior around the property. These disturbances have been reported to police, yet the situation did not improve, and we have little faith that ongoing short-term rentals would be any different. We have seen it, and I'm worried it will continue to make our peaceful neighborhood unsafe, not just for my children, but for everyone in our small community of 35 homes. The noise, strangers, and traffic have disrupted the safety we once felt. Our young children now know that if there are lots of unfamiliar cars down the street, they are not allowed to ride their bikes that way. They understand that they are strangers and it's no longer safe. The Daniels, who have been part of this neighborhood for years, understand the importance of our peaceful neighborhood, but their decision to rent out the property has introduced chaos. They claim that going forward, they'll make sure the renters aren't loud and parking will be limited, but how can we trust them? They failed to get the required permits and only went through the process when they got caught. They rented the house without proper zoning or the decency to communicate with their surrounding neighbors. They are not trustworthy. I want my children to grow up in the neighborhood we originally moved into, where we felt safe and where they could ride their bikes to their friends' houses whenever they wanted. Having this property used as a short-term rental in this neighborhood on this small residential street could cause a significant adverse effect on all of the other residents of the neighborhood. Parking issues, speeding, violence, police involvement, arrests, noise, danger to the children who live on the street. So we're asking for your support to restore the peace and safety and ensure our neighborhood remains a place where families can feel comfortable and secure. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please state your name, address, and affiliation with the case.
My name is Kenneth P. Kreider. I'm an attorney with Keating, Muthing, and Kleekamp, and I'm here tonight representing Hank Yiser, who lives at 6513 Kentucky View. He's a long-term resident, but he could not be here tonight, so he asked me to come and speak on his behalf. But since I'm an attorney, I will not be testifying, so I will not be subject to any cross-examination by my friend, Tim
Ken,
Burke.
that would be fun.
So I'm just going to address 2 points that are in the staff report. The staff report says that they don't believe that this will have an adverse effect. We've heard testimony from at least 10 or 15 people tonight, and probably going to hear some more about the adverse effects they've already experienced. Now, proposed rule changes are great, but that's no guarantee against future adverse effects from the use. And some of those adverse effects are just inherent in the use of the property as an STR, especially in a single-family neighborhood without sidewalks, without lights, as you've heard from some of the neighbors. You have this on your books as a conditional use, but it's much more appropriate in an area that's a little more commercialized and not a low-density single-family residence area as this is zoned. The staff report also said that, and I find this a little bit circular, that the properties designated for single-family residence use on the future land map, and staff believes that the proposed short-term rental is consistent with that use classification. Well, it's not. It's not at all. It's a commercial type use, and the interests of the people that stay in the house as a short-term rental are inherently in conflict and different from those of the long-term property owners. These are just 2 reasons why the board should deny the conditional use request. And again, you've heard plenty of testimony, and I'm sure you're going to hear some more. This isn't even a hard case. The other 10 or so that Mr. Burke referred to, I don't know any of the facts about those. I don't know whether the neighbors were opposed or in favor, but this is an easy case when you have all these property owners, one after the other, coming up and telling you that it's adverse and they don't want it. So the board should deny it. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Please state your name, address, and any affiliation.
My name's Don Bronning. I live at 6561 Kentucky View Drive. We're basically fourth house down. I just wanted to agree with everything everybody's already said. I just wanted to share a personal experience I had on the 15th. During the gender reveal party, I came home about 7:30. There were quite a few guys standing in the street drinking. They were reluctant to let me pass and stared at me the whole time I drove past, to the point it made me feel very uncomfortable. When I got home, I went in, I locked the doors, and watched to make sure they didn't follow me, because I really wasn't sure what was going to happen. Later that night, I ordered a security camera for the driveway, because we just never know when these renters are going to come back and take advantage of us or harm our property. Sorry, I'm trying to read this and I'm shaking a little bit. I know that they say they've changed the rules to prevent these parties in the future. However, once the renters enter their house, they really have no control over what they do when they get in there. And in closing, I just want to say, if this was your street, I am convinced that you would not want this event center as your neighbor. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Please state your name, address, and any affiliation.
Matt White, 6520 Gwendolyn Drive. It is on the corner of Kentucky View and Gwendolyn. I'd just like to state that thanks to everyone here. This is not a great situation. I have an 8-year-old son, as everyone else says. They like their kids to ride up and down the street. There's no sidewalks, there's no lights. I'd like to just personally report the firsthand experience of the night of the 15th. My girlfriend and I, we walk the neighborhood quite often when it's dark, there's unfamiliar people. That night I had to actually end up calling the cops because there was unattended kids left in the car, apparently way after other people called, because I called at like 9 o'clock or so, or after 9, after the fireworks. And that's what actually prompted 4 cops' cars to come. But during that, I had cars speed down the street. If you want to see Kentucky View down towards the end, towards the Fitzgerald's house, where we were walking at night, there was 4 cars. I'm guessing intoxicated because they went good 35 miles an hour down into a screeching halt and almost rear-ended each other. At that time, they turned around, struggled to turn around, threw trash out, and then continued on. That night, I also texted the Fitzgerald, let them know what happened. They informed me that it's a Airbnb, which I didn't know up until the 15th, and then all the buttons clicked. That's why there's all these cars in the neighborhood this summer. Which then also prompted me to go, oh, that makes more sense why there's trash down at the bottom of the street, is people are just tossing their trash. There was an empty bottle of Jack Daniels that I pick up when I go down there. I try to clean up the neighborhood. Am I responsible to clean up the neighborhood for a short-term rental? Do I need to text them, hey, I think your people littered again? Like, when does it become my responsibility to help them run a business? Do I bill them? This is a very slippery slope, and clearly they have not responded with any timely manner. If they're 10 minutes away, they didn't respond that night when they knew there was fireworks, when they knew there was a fight. They were not there to take care of their property. That does not stand well for anyone here. Again, slippery slope with Riverbend 2.0 coming in. You're going to have more Airbnb investors coming in if you allow this, which then your tax levies, your neighborhood goes down. They're not going to support Anderson Township. They're just there to make money. And if you allow this, that is their incentive, is just to make more money at the cost of the neighborhood.
Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please state your name, address, and any affiliation.
My name is Brett Harnett, 6045 Gwendolyn Drive. This is my wife Angie. We are perpendicular to the Daniels property. I want to spend a few minutes just pointing out some of the incongruencies that I've heard, and then I'm going to point out the risks. I've gone through and scratched a lot of things out with my red pen because you said not to repeat things. So I'm going to try not to do that. I want to talk about the first slide that we have is, obviously you have this one. This is the VRBO website, and it's still being advertised with 7 bedrooms, sleeps 14. Oh, wait a second. I did this on Monday at 6:04 p.m. Before I came here tonight, they changed it to 5. I also put an inset here of the auditor's site, and according to the auditors, they have 3 bedrooms. Now, so let's talk about this. Some of the things we have gone over already about not having the building permit in the basement, the fact that they didn't have a permit to even do what they're doing now. But I also want to underscore that Callista is a real estate agent, and she has been for 23 years. Okay, turn around. As we go down into the documents supplied by her lawyer, we have Article 7, Exhibit 7 on the, you've all seen this probably, which is the emergency exit plan. But guess what's missing here? The emergency exit plan for the basement, where there's 4 more bedrooms. Here we have a photo of the basement. There's a kitchenette, there's a pool table, and there's a bedroom over here. What happens if there's a fire in this area here? How does this person get out? they won't know. Next slide. This is the infamous gender reveal party. All I want to point out here is someone had mentioned the fireworks. I want to mention that the fireworks were lit off in a period of one of the worst droughts we've ever had. 6 police cruisers showed up. And here's a picture of some of the automobiles and a U-Haul van. This is that day of the gender reveal party. And in that U-Haul van were 2 speakers that were so large it took 2 dudes to pull it out. We had a personal thing going on that day, a celebration of life for Angie's brother who unexpectedly died 2 weeks before. We had to move people from the back of the house to the front of the house because the noise was too much. Next slide. No sidewalks on Kentucky Drew, if you heard that, and spikes in traffic from weekly renters and their party guests present extreme risks to the children of our neighborhood. You've heard that this is a closed neighborhood, dead-end streets, no sidewalks, no street lights, but there's only local traffic, and you've heard that everyone watches out for each other. I'm vastly concerned about the children of our neighborhood. Next slide. This is a picture I took October 27th, Sunday, 2:04 p.m. This is Esme, Sonny, and Pepper. This is what happens all the time here. These kids ride up and down the street. They walk up and down the street. We can't have groups of people coming in every week, ripping through the neighborhood. These kids will not be able to come out and be kids. They'll have to stay holed up in their house. Okay. Next slide. That's it. Okay. So I wanted to bring up a conversation I had with Callista the day after the party. And I was in my garage, 8 o'clock in the morning or so. And she gingerly walked up the driveway and said, "Hello, I want to talk to you." And explained that she was really sorry about what happened, and they did everything they could to prevent this from happening, but she has no control at the end of the day about what people do when they rent this house. She went on and on about how they tried to protect and keep the neighborhood safe. I then asked her a very simple question. Why are you doing this? She boldly explained this was Todd and her retirement program. This is how they were going to sock money away for their retirement. And she also said this was a litmus test to see how it worked. So while they're holed up in their trailer in New Richmond, the rest of the neighborhood has to deal with the weekly fallout. I said, "Your litmus test is over." She said, "Oh, we're going to keep on doing it. In fact, we have 2025 almost all sold out." I said, "You need to buy other property elsewhere if you want to do this plan." Not against their plan. I'm against doing it here. Buy a house on the Jersey Shore. I'm not even going to go through the summary because you've heard all this stuff already. However, I want to ask you some questions. How would you feel if your small children were not allowed to ride their bikes or even walk on the side of the road because of weekly spikes in traffic from new groups of people every week who drive up and down the street, some possibly drunk? How would you feel had to keep your garage door closed all summer because strangers appear to be looking in your garage and what kind of cars you drive. How would you feel if you have to listen for altercations and foul language to shield your kids? And finally, how would you feel if you simply didn't feel safe? I urge you to reject the Daniels request to rent this house to strangers through customers they find through VRBO. And more importantly, the risks that they bring with them. And I believe number 2 in one of your slides talks about adverse events in the neighborhood. Thank you. Okay, sports, stand up.
Sir, I'm going to ask that you actually maintain decorum the whole time.
I'm sorry.
Inappropriate comments there.
What's
If
that?
he wants to cross-examine you, he can, but let's not refer to folks as sport.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry, attorney. I knew he's coming, he's standing up.
Just a couple of questions. First of all, you complain about the fact that the only drawing of an exit plan was for the first floor.
That's what we see, yes.
That's what you see. And you saw that from the application that was filed, right?
Exhibit 8.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. And let me show you, and this is that application. Would you agree with that?
That, yep. Mhm.
It's the application. And what does the first 2 sentences in this paragraph say for the emergency response plan?
A copy of the example is attached on Exhibit 8.
You skipped the first
Well,
sentence.
the Daniels are posting in each room their home and evacuation procedure. But why is it not here?
Because we showed an example.
Oh, it's in, so.
That's exactly what it says.
So that, okay, that's an
Okay?
example. All right, so, right, so I would like to have seen the lower,
If they had asked for that,
Okay.
we would have given it to them.
okay.
But you go into a hotel.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, we'll,
Okay.
any further questions? from
Any
the board?
further questions?
Any further questions from the board?
I'm done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Seeing none, does the appellant wish to have a rebuttal statement?
Yes, I'd like to bring Calissa back up.
You can strictly address the board. Did you have any other additional opposition? Please, why don't you come up to the podium there and then please state your name, address. Were you sworn in?
Yes.
Okay, please state your
My
name
name
and
is
address.
Tina Browning. I live at 6561 Kentucky View Drive. And my question is he got to question the people that came up in opposition. Are we allowed to ask Callista questions
You can ask
about what she
questions of us,
says?
and we can, if we feel so, we can direct it to her. He's an attorney, so he's allowed to question the witness.
I was just curious. I didn't know how that all
So
worked.
if you have questions, you can definitely bring them to the board, and then the board can consider them in asking,
So I just say it like right now?
yes.
So I guess my question to Callista was it your intention all along when you purchased the house to make it an Airbnb? And if not, it seemed to me it was, because there was only 2 people in the house, and they put in a 20 by 40 pool and added 3 bedrooms to make a 7-bedroom house for 2 people. But when I ran into her, she told me they were renting the house because the taxes were too high and the house was too big for them. And so my question was it her intention all along, just one question, to buy the house to turn it into an Airbnb? That's my question. Okay?
And maybe I missed it, but ma'am, did you give your name and address? Sorry
Yeah.
if you didn't.
Tina Browning,
Okay.
6561 Kentucky
Thank
View
you.
Callista, first, do you want to respond to the question?
Yes, when we bought the home, it definitely wasn't our intention, and we added the extra rooms once we decided to turn it into an Airbnb and hired our neighbor across the street to do so because he's a contractor and does that kind of work. He knew what we were doing with it. They felt like it was a good idea. I was having positive feedback from my immediate neighbors and friends that I was talking to about it ahead of time, but it wasn't our intention when we bought the home to do that. It happened after we became empty nesters.
Is there anything else you would like to say to the board?
I would like to say that my intention is to be within good spirit with the community. I have full intentions of, and I've already changed all of the rules. If we are able to move forward, the rules are going to be completely different because I personally don't want the disturbances, any additional disturbances such as an event. I don't want events there. I don't want big parties there. But if people want to frolic in the pool, that's fine. But I do have a noise meter out there to protect the neighbors from loud language and loud noises. Now I do. So
I did have a question about your, sorry to interrupt, your noise meter. Is that remotely monitored? Does it give you an alert that noise is too loud, or is it just for the local residents?
Yes, if it goes off too many times, it can alert me. If it goes off more than, I think, 3 times in 15 minutes, it alerts me.
Thank you.
And it's set at a low decimal too. Like, you really can't be that loud out there right now.
It is adjustable though by you.
It is adjustable, but you know, I don't want to receive any complaints from them. I want them to be happy. So.
Callista, it was suggested by one of the speakers that you made no effort to contact the police, I guess actually the sheriff's office.
I did. I actually did call that night, and I did address anybody who had complained to me, and even address them days after, but I did call the police, and they said, we've already been contacted, we know. That was it. And I was like, okay, cool. They already had people on their way. So, and actually the people that were staying there called the police too, because I alerted them to the fight from the neighbors, and they were like, oh, so we'll call the police as well. So, but they did remain for the rest of their stay, but I told them they were not allowed to have even one friend over. Like, it was just them, and there were, at that point, 4 adults staying in the home for the remaining 4 days.
Is there anything else you want to say?
Just thank you for listening to us. Thank you for staying so late, and thank you for your consideration. We hope that we've answered all your questions.
And I'd like to simply offer a few, and I will keep them brief, comments in closing. First of all, Ken Kreider, who is a friend and an attorney who I've worked with on any number of cases over the years, I disagree with Ken when he suggests that, well, Airbnbs should only be allowed in more commercial areas. You all have made a decision some time ago that that's not a rule that you are following. And one of the reasons why I provided those examples of past minutes and the auditor's plats to go along with those is that the Anderson zoning resolution now specifically provides, and you well know this, for the opportunity, and I'm not saying you have to approve every one, but for the opportunity to have short-term rentals in single-family and multifamily zones. And that's what you have passed on, as near as I could tell from those exhibits that I've given you 12 out of 13 times when they've come before you in the last 2.5 years in highly residential neighborhoods, very similar to this one. Nobody in this room thinks what happened on September 15th should have happened. And I know and understand why the neighbors were upset about that. So were the Daniels. And I know the neighbors are so upset that they don't want to believe anything. But it remains important that You hear what the facts are, which is probably why I felt I needed to be a little more direct and trying to be brief, and was a little harsher than perhaps I should have been with some of my cross-examination questions. But the fact of the matter is, there has been a lot of at least exaggeration in the complaints that you have heard. Again, what happened on the 15th never should have happened. And the clear testimony is that after that, rules were changed. Now, because there haven't been any significant number of short-term rentals, because this is not the season when they do short-term rentals. The Daniels are living back in that home now and plan to do so again until next spring. When they do, hope they will be able to continue to engage in short-term rentals then. There is nothing in and of it themselves wrong with a short-term rental in a residential neighborhood. The Township zoning resolution has made that clear, and you all have made that clear by your actions in other cases. Give them a chance to do this right. And I'm not trying to justify the fact that they began this without having come to you. I would suggest that I think an awful lot of your residents in Anderson Township, and by the way, my twin daughters and their families live here in Anderson Township. We've got 2 kids at Anderson now. One graduated from Anderson, one graduated from Turpin, and another one still coming. So I know Anderson very well, and I know that Anderson, like my neighborhood in Mount Lookout, there's a lot of places where there aren't sidewalks and there aren't streetlights. And I know that, and I understand that. But that's the case even in some of the places, I think, where you've already addressed and approved short-term rentals to go forward. There's not a whole lot else for me to say. I would sum it up this way, and I think your staff report said it correctly when they found that the application filed was compliant in every respect that's outlined in their staff report. We didn't write that, they did. All we wrote was the application, and I believe it does comply with the requirements of the Anderson Township zoning resolution for the approval of their short-term rentals as a conditional use on the property. I'd be happy to respond to any other questions you have, although I'm not testifying as to facts, I'm presenting argument. That's my job.
Sure. If the conditional use is granted, one of the requirements is that they comply in the future with all these provisions in the zoning. And if they don't, let's say they start serving meals to the public, whatever, the permit can be revoked, right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. So let's say, for sake of argument, or I guess, what would you say to the neighbors who would say, well, if they'd come and they'd applied for this conditional use in the spring, and they had, and we granted it, and they had people there all the summer, and then the gender reveal party happened, wouldn't the permit have been revoked then? And what would you say to the neighbors who say, well, now I get a second chance at the apple, the second bite at the apple, whatever it is, because they violated the rules the first time? And what would you say to them?
First of all, it's not the situation that we've got. We've had one instance where there was a very serious violation of their rules, as well as what the rules would have been had they had the short-term rental conditional use approved. And while I do believe that an approved conditional use can be revoked if the terms of it are violated, I think there does have to be a hearing to do that. That much due process you have to go through so that everybody would have the opportunity to have their say and to attempt to protect their rights if they can. But you would have the right to do that. I agree with that. I've been on the other side of these because I've represented municipalities myself, and have defended their actions in enforcing zoning codes. I get that, and I understand why these can sometimes be very difficult issues and very emotional issues, as this one was tonight. But there are rights that exist on all sides of the question.
Early on in this, when you were speaking, you inferred that this board passed this legislation, and this board did not, and you need to clarify.
And I'm happy to clarify that.
We do not pass legislation.
Believe me, I understand that. I spent 40 years as the law director for Lockland, 20 years as the law director for Evendale, and have represented in special matters almost every municipality in Hamilton County at one time or another. So I understand who actually has to adopt zoning codes or zoning resolutions, as they are properly referred to in townships.
Right.
My point is, the township trustees, by doing that, have recognized that short-term rentals are appropriate in single and multifamily zones. What I said about you all is that at least on 13 or 14 times in the last 2.5 years, you've considered applications for conditional use permits for short-term rentals. And as near as I could tell, on all but one of those, you approved them.
So one wasn't approved, but prior to that statement, you definitely inferred that this board,
If I did that, I apologize. That was certainly not my intention, because I know that that's not accurate. I know who has to adopt zoning resolutions, because I've written them. But if I gave you that impression, that's certainly not what I was intending to do. And
Okay.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Board have any opinions on closing the public hearing?
I move that we close the public hearing.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Matt, who would like to start us off?
Notes. You want to go start it? No, I'm still organizing my notes.
I'll start. As the five of you know, the four of you know, I guess I'm at five. I haven't been here for all of the 13 or 14 of these that we considered the last 2 years, but I've been here for probably 8 or 9 of them. I was looking through those maps. I don't remember a few of them, but I remember most of them. And I think on every one that I've been here for, I've been voted in favor of it. Partly because we don't pass the zoning resolution, as Paul said, as Tim said. The trustees do, and our job is to implement the policy the trustees create, right? We don't get to decide if there should be short-term rentals. We don't get to decide how big a sign should be, any of that stuff. They do. So, I've read the zoning resolution generally to say that, yeah, these are permitted in residential areas, and so the fact that, well, this is a neighborhood generally doesn't mean that we shouldn't approve it. However, in however many I've been here for, we've heard more testimony about the adverse effect on the neighborhood tonight than we have in all of those combined. And that is one of the factors the trustee says we have to consider, right? In addition to, all the other things about serving meals to the public and so on, one of the considerations that we have to consider, and it came up in some of the other cases too, is in order to grant the conditional use permit, we have to find that the proposed short-term rental would not have an adverse effect on adjacent properties for public health, safety, and general welfare. And I don't know how I could say, from the evidence we've heard today, that they meet that criterion. I just think they don't. I don't think there's any question about it. I think we've heard a lot of credible testimony from however many people over there that this has had a significant adverse effect on the neighborhood. It's absolutely true that there are other neighborhoods in Anderson where we have granted them. There hasn't been that kind of evidence. I don't know what to say about that, and I think for that reason, I couldn't vote to grant this application.
This is an extremely difficult case, as you're struggling, I'm sure, as much as the rest of us are. And that said, in the other cases, there have been neighbors who have come before the board in opposition and said they didn't want this to happen in this house because it's a residential neighborhood. And as much as we respectfully listen to them, that's not a criteria for denying. Just the fact that this is a residential neighborhood is not, in fact, a valid criteria tonight. But we have never, in any of those cases, heard the amount of neighborhood, I'm not trying to find a word to you, concern, considerations, angst that perhaps that we've heard in this case, which is, as much as I generally approve of short-term rentals, no matter what the neighborhood is, because that's been the township zoning, I think the amount of pushback in this case is considerably more than in any case, not just this, but than in any case I've sat in probably the 6 years or 7 years I've been on the board. And I am inclined not to approve it.
I can only think of one other case that was similar to this, and that was the one on Strathcona off of Asbury. It was in a cul-de-sac. There was a ranch. And they had a huge party that got out of control. They had inflatables in the yard and all that. I believe, and I wasn't part of that, but I believe it was approved in the end. The big difference I see here is that this house, as big as it is, with the pool, almost lends itself to creating a lot of issues. Anytime you put 15 people in a house with a pool and everything else, chances are it's not always going to go smoothly. So I can see the concern that they have, because I don't know that, like the one on Strathcona was probably a one-off. We've never heard another word about that house again. But I don't know that in this situation it would be the same.
The size of the house to me does not matter. The size of the pool doesn't matter. The size of the property doesn't matter.
It's the opportunity.
Well, that could happen in any residence. It's the incident and the impact it's had on this community that lends me not to support this.
Thanks, John.
So,
And I get back to your point, Mr. Nye, about the no adverse effects. And I guess that's the language from that guides us. No adverse effect. That's a pretty fine. That's a pretty strong line there. That in this case, there's been demonstrated. There's been plenty of adverse effect, and you understand your point as well too. If this happened before and then the party happened afterwards, we approved it before and then they had a party and then there's a situation like that. Second bite at the apple. But obviously that's not part of this consideration. But looking at the adverse effect, I think it's.
Yeah, I think I'd like to add that there are a couple things that I heard some complaints about that I really don't think I give maybe any weight to. Parking on the street, you can't control where people park, it's a public street. They can't park on the hydrant side, but they can park on the street. I don't really give any consideration to that. I think, I think for me, there's, what I would say is so much credible testimony about the adverse effect on the neighborhood that it's conclusive for me. That's where I come down. So I would deny the application.
And I believe there was a subsequent incident after this incident. Is that correct?
Or some stated some other timeframes.
After this, there was a second incident within a couple of weeks.
Well, so I think there was a storm that came through at the end of September.
Well, I'm not
and
worried
the tree
about that,
came
yeah.
down, and then there was, some.
Yeah.
I've got a couple other dates, 9/19 and then 9/27 where it was mentioned.
Yeah, there
I
was a
think
second incident of some kind after
The 15th
this.
was the one where the sheriff was involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we heard testimony that there were incidents before then too, not obviously this big. And again, I take the point that nobody in this room thinks that what happened at the gender reveal party should have happened, but, and also, I think, Paul, you used the phrase, sort of, what did you say? You said, you've heard a lot of concern, consideration, and angst, I think is what I said. Those are considerations that I tend to downplay. Like, everyone's afraid of the new neighbor moving in, everyone's afraid of, short-term neighbors. I don't think I give a lot of weight to that aspect of the testimony. I mean, what I really think is most credible and most persuasive is the specific testimony about the adverse effect on the neighborhood, not the worries about what it might be.
No. Well, you may have misinterpreted what I said by angst. It wasn't angst about having an Airbnb in a neighborhood. That has no place in this discussion. An Airbnb is allowed in the neighborhood. The angst, as I was relating it to, was the specific incident, the follow-up, and the subsequent incidents. That's where I was for it. It had nothing to do with, everybody here could testify that they did want an Airbnb in the neighborhood, and if all the other rules were playing, I would approve it.
Exactly, that's right. It's not, the worry isn't the thing. We've got actual incidents.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to cut anyone off unless you heard, but I would move to deny based on what we discussed.
I don't think that was a motion, Joe.
No, sure it is. Mr. Chairman, with respect to case 24?
24.
I move that we deny the application for a conditional use permit for the reasons discussed.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence? Aye. Mr. Sion?
Aye. That it's been tentatively denied. The decision journalization will probably happen next month.
It'll happen next month.
After council has a chance to review. With that, we've got the other two cases. You wanna do that today, the decision and journalization on the initial two cases?
Yeah, we can. At those.
You're welcome to stay if you like, but we're going back on the first two cases.
After the meeting. If you guys received the neighbor notice, on that neighbor notice should be an email. You can just send an email to one of us. Or on our website, there should be 4 hyperlinks.
This isn't the longest one in a while.
At the December meeting will be when the journalization will be. It'll just be a formal version of what they just said. So, no, their next action is they could take it to the Court of Common Pleas to take care of, or to appeal our decision, but that I don't know. That next step, again, I haven't experienced that yet, but yeah. Sure, no problem. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wait, where did Mr. Lawrence leave? Is he in the back? Mr. Halpin?
Yes, sir.
The meeting is still going. Yes, did you need a restroom? Yeah, it should be.
not done yet. Yes, you should. No, you should not.
Phone's getting ready to die. In fact, it's dying. Yeah, Bengals are what, at 21-7. That's what it says.
You guys get overtime?
Pretty good.
And he threw a long pass too, or did he throw a 5-yarder and Chase ran 62?
What's the difference? What's the stat sheet?
He's getting criticized for not throwing the long ball.
I'm sorry. All right. Let's ready. Gentlemen, we're ready.
This,
The first one was the signs.
we need to do an administrative reorder to consider this one first, or?
No.
No. We're gonna go in order of how they were presented today. With 25, which, is the Woodland Mountain one. I'll leave this time. Yeah. This was the testimony closer to 5:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, the variance will not be substantial.
Oh, this one will need to get tweaked, because this is deferred from, staff's summary, so. This will need tweaking from, y'all.
All right, so first paragraph. Yeah, and then second paragraph, first number. Yeah. Not be substantial. I don't really even put the rest of that on there.
We had the one, you were here when we did the paddle ball. That was that one too. I don't know if it was this long.
All right, so
Because we
take
had
the
the
sentence
two.
out. Do you want an explanation there? Hey, hey.
John, the this meeting is still going on.
Do you want to replace this sentence with says something like, most of the sun is below 6 feet tall, thresholds, and I just want to take it out entirely. Take it out entirely. And this one, I think, let's say the sign is in a wooded area. Signs unobtrusive in a wooded area. Period.
Do we need all? Do we need all of these in the resolution? Yeah.
This is your resolution.
Did they need like an additional site plan or something on this? Did you want additional?
Yeah, the third condition being that an amended site plan indicating setbacks from right of way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Amended site plan showing setbacks.
Yeah, we need the setbacks from the right of way. They say it'll be 10 feet from edge of pavement, but that doesn't mean that's from right of way. So in the application, it shows that it's 10 feet from edge of pavement. That doesn't necessarily mean end of right of way. It needs to be 10 feet out of the right of way. Compliant setbacks.
Yeah.
Setback.
Motion.
Second.
Approve and journalize. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion.
Aye.
Mr. Halpin.
Aye.
Mr. Shekels.
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
For case 26, did you want to use similar language?
Same language. Identical.
So just change the top and bottom.
Got this nice little pillow under there.
Keep sign.
Use the sign.
No, just got stuff to do sometimes. Hold on, this one is not so much in a wooded area?
Yeah.
The sign is unobtrusive, let's stop there, that's good enough.
This is your resolution.
I don't hear any objections. Type it. Yeah. I don't think they're rural.
Any edits to the rationale?
No, not for me. Did they have a site plan condition on this too?
Yeah.
Good remember.
Can we get a motion?
I move that we approve and journal our decision in case 26.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion.
Aye.
Mr. Halpin. Mr. Shekels. Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence.
Motion to adjourn?
No,
one
don't we have the
more.
other one?
One
Don't
more.
we have the Kroger?
Case
Kroger?
22.
Oh, okay. out at Cherry Grove, right? John? Yeah. Time to read. Time to read.
Is there no bowling alley out there? Sorry.
What?
Let's get this started.
Sorry, guys. All right. This is the Kroger.
They're I don't know why we want to keep there no adverse effect and then tell them what the adverse impact is.
Yeah, we gotta edit that. I wasn't there yet.
This is your resolution.
We're gonna tell them no property rights. Just say there's.
Can we actually strike the second sentence on number 1 before we get to number 2? It's not the enhancing the value that I think does a lot for me. It aligns with the purpose of the district. Okay. Adverse effect.
You scratch the second sentence. And probably the third.
There's two.
There's only 2 sentences.
Yeah.
I'd say take 2 out.
Just take everything, no adverse effect, period. No,
Well, I'd do
no,
I'd do
you could say expected if you wanted to.
No adverse effect.
Non-expected.
Observe.
How about, I think one of the things that we discussed here is that it's less intense use than some of the prior uses. Maybe we should put something like that in there? The proposed
Use is less dense than the prior use. Less intensive. You do, you know.
Okay.
No, we don't. Did they get a violation notice formally?
From
They
soil
did.
and water?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then we done there. If they got a formal.
No, I mean, I think like, that's for them to figure out though. Like, there's gonna be, the proposed use will have no effect on public service.
You're right.
Say, the proposed use will have no effect on public service. And if they don't clear up their wastewater issue or whatever, then they're not gonna get a certificate of occupancy, and that's not our problem.
You won't get a building.
Building permit, whatever it is, any of those things.
There's somebody said that.
Onward and upward. Okay. All right, all those, number 4 is all good.
Thank you.
Okay, we gotta get the language about staff is of the opinion that out of here, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
Kroger
even
intends-
farther
just-
up.
Just say Kroger intends to comply with all applicable, you do that? Yeah, just that, just leave that in there, just the Kroger intends to comply with all applicable US and EPA regulations, period.
Yeah, I think there was a staff, go up to number 1 too.
You go to staff.
There,
Yeah, there is.
staff is of the
Second
opinion that
that.
granting this variance is reasonable. Okay, so, let's just say, the board finds that the variance is warranted.
Go with the board is of the opinion.
No, the board, we don't have opinions in these things, we conclude, we decide, right? We resolve. It's a resolution. BZA finds, the board finds that granting this variance
Is a reasonable compromise.
I would say that this variance is warranted.
Well, we can.
is warranted, period, and then express the rest of it.
You can get rid of that.
Fourth item says that it is,
No, I don't like any of those sentences on the second page. Just type, erase everything on the second page there and type in warranted. Yeah, like, Benny, you okay with that? All right. Yeah. But I don't, I mean, there's not a lot of those bones at all.
We've got a lot of basketball machines.
Boy, do they.
Just start striking out the staff opinion.
what it be used for now.
Can we say they're, regulated, what do you say about regulated substances? There aren't gonna be regulated substances, right? And
Well,
that's-
we don't know that, but staff is saying that the plans apply. It's still- Just leave that sentence in and the rest of it. You're gonna deal with that. You would have to do an explanation of what they are. We trust your opinion.
Yeah, except we don't want staff. We want staff fines.
Staff fines.
Not staff, staff's totally fine.
The board finds?
We didn't talk about regulated substance, so I'm gonna vote no on this, because I didn't find it. Where do I send all this to?
And I'm trying to focus here.
Yeah.
No, we don't need any information. Oh, you're on your now. Yeah, good. Same way with nuisances, same sentence.
No, let's say,
What are
no,
the
we should more,
nuisances?
like, you know, the evidence establishes that proposed use is not likely to cause nuisance. Does cause nuisance, they can have a nuisance claim, that's not really our, at least not.
Evidence presented includes.
Yeah, that the proposed use is not likely to cause nuisance. The evidence presented establishes that the proposed use is not likely to cause a nuisance.
And then Kroger will provide to the staff for approval, a landscaping plan and a lighting plan.
Did you want that in number 5?
No.
Number 6, staff,
Okay.
Kroger will provide to staff a landscape and lighting plan that meets with their approval. That meets their approval. No, meets the staff approval, the staff, meets the staff approval. That's implied, but we can clear it up.
I don't think there's any evidence for the other way, no.
They aren't really making any.
No enhancements. except when they run under the railroad and get stuck. If they haven't figured that out by now, then they shouldn't be buying the damn property.
Leasing?
I always thought that would be a legal bar though.
Submitted evidence on.
All right, okay, sorry. Focus up, focus up.
Rather than from there, should that be on? Is it in the number one rather than from November 7th? Make that on.
Okay, does the revised plan,
It notes in new 6-foot tall privacy fence, so if you're comfortable, we can remove that.
yeah, if it's in the plan,
Then we can.
instead of would need to be, let's say must be.
Well, vertical handicap signage, you're gonna have to have that for.
Your attorney was also trying, I was trying to pick up on why he's wanting something that says vertical. So
Well, I understand because if you're gonna be planning,
No, I get practical speaking, but in the conditions, it doesn't say it's gotta be.
I think their attorney called us earlier today to follow up their revised plans. And yeah, we told them that we felt that it wasn't really a necessary request, since typically the board does allow for I think at least a year, if not a couple of years, for things to come into place. So.
Okay.
all right, and number 8 is your contribution.
Yeah, wait, so 3 and 4, are those conditions on the conditional use, or are those requirements under?
That's required by the building department, building and zoning.
Yeah, we don't need those, right?
Nope.
It was absent from the originally submitted plan. Again, we haven't had a chance to completely review the plans they submitted today.
They're gonna have to have handicap parking spots on it.
So the original plan that they submitted, they were ground marked, but they didn't have the vertical handicap signage, so that's why it's
Well,
noted in there.
that's for the building department to work on, not us.
Is that right? To get a
It
building
is also
permit, they're gonna need
part
that?
of our-
No, but the building's already built, we don't need a building.
Well, they're still be building on the.
They will need one for the.
Modify it, so.
Is that what 13 is?
Yeah, I read these things for a living, and I have struggled with this. Oh, we go to add that, what the heck, that hurt, we have it in twice or three.
Bike spaces are required per Anderson. Well, there was testimony that there are cyclists on Mount Carmel Road.
Yeah, everybody was telling you how the bicyclists are gonna die down there. And how the-
Yeah,
so
but that
you-
doesn't mean they're employees.
You know, my dad did last month, he rode his bike from Cleveland to Cincinnati. I've known my dad for almost
On the
43
old
years.
bike trail down
Yeah,
there? Yeah.
I've never seen him ride a bike until I picked him up at the river. Yeah.
How long did it take you? About 6-7 days?
5 and a half. You can do it.
There's a rock, there's a,
I know you can do it.
there's also a summer run that does that now.
All right, gentlemen, focus back
All
on
right,
screen there.
Let's get back to focusing.
I know you guys wanna hang out a little longer here.
I don't care, I gotta be there till the damn thing's signed anyway.
Well, the sooner we get this done, the
All right,
sooner we
okay,
can sign
so
it.
where are we? What do we decide while I was looking at this?
Now, did we do the 1 and 2 on this one?
Yes, we're done with 1 and 2.
There's questions on 3 and 4.
I do not see it.
Wait, so what do we decide? Do we need 3 and 4 in? The plans submitted today appear to have vertical signs at marks 13 and 14.
What about bicycle?
I think that's what this is, but I haven't found the key yet.
I believe they note it, but again, staff hasn't had an opportunity to do a complete review of their submitted plans, so that's why we have that language in.
All right, leave it for both.
I don't see the
Yeah.
1 and 2.
It's always the last one. One of the last ones.
8 is the last one.
Let me get to 1. Okay, it's 5 good. Additional information is mentioned in staff report. What is that?
What is it, Brandon?
That's
That
what
would-
we just talked about a minute ago, right? That's-
Yeah, that would be, if you, in the staff report, there was multiple times where they said, the applicant says they're compliant, but they don't say how they're compliant. So you guys, yeah, you guys want to.
Okay. 6, I don't think we need that one either. Okay, and then 7, construction started with 1 year commitment to 2. Said they
Add
wanna
the
do it by February.
That's fine, or is it give them extra time? They may want
Should start with 1 year. Is it, or we still want that condition, start within 1 year, complete
Yeah.
within 2?
Yeah, they're gonna get it
Well,
done.
where's it, you took out the statement about the
Yeah,
land.
we don't need it.
We do need it about this expires when Kroger leaves.
That's not what we took in there. That's still right
It's
there.
number 6 now.
Number, it's the
Oh,
last
what,
one.
no, it's 6.
Still the last one.
Construction begins with 1 year and is complete.
It hasn't moved, just changed number. Just changed
Well, I
order.
can't deal with that.
I hate you guys. Keep you back on the feet another time.
You hate us, and yet you volunteer to come here.
Here I am, what's wrong with me, right?
You're the one who's sick, not us. We're gonna change.
Any further comments? We need a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion to second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin? Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Motion to adjourn?
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin? Mr. Shekels? Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Just a name.
Okay, am I allowed to leave now?
You are allowed to leave.